Hello, so I will be giving the presentation for redux-saga. So this is my main screen. Let me. So this is my main screen. Here we are just showing the users count. So here's the button. Click to get all the users. When I will click on this, it will show me the users. It will show me some users. Okay. So whenever when I will click on this button, this function will be called inc. In this function, this this action will be dispatched with an empty object. So the curly braces says that it is empty object. So what is this action? Let's go here. So this action is present inside redux folder. So inside redux folders we have actions, reducers and sagas. So inside the action we go inside the entities and then users. So I had called there fetch user. So this thing will be called. Now what it will return? It will return the action type fetch user and the payload. Inside the payload data is there. See this data. Okay, and fetch user success also data. Fetch failure success also data. But here in the payload error will be there. So in the fetch user data will be there and this will be our complete action. Now when so this thing will be delivered here in the dispatch, and then the dispatch and then an action will be dispatched which will have the type fetch user and payload as data. Okay, so now what will happen that when I will when I will pass that fetch data, so I have the middleware which is sagas. So inside the users we can see that whenever this action type of fetch user will be passed, the redux saga will become active and it will call fetch user saga, which is this worker saga. So watcher saga and worker saga. Watcher saga will again and again call worker saga whenever fetch user action will be dispatched. Okay, so inside the fetch user saga we have just called this fetch user success, which is nothing but like API. No, yeah, here in const users yield call this API. So the watcher saga will call this worker saga and this worker saga will call this API. This is nothing but just a fake kind of API. It will just return some information, just this 1 2 3 and my saga. So this will be returned inside the users and then this action will be dispatched fetch user success with this data users. Now what is like this fetch user success? When we will call this, then this action will be called. Go inside the entities and this. So fetch user success. Okay, so there, so here we have, wait, just a second. Yeah, so this fetch user success will be called, and we can see this fetch user success with this data is being called, and this will return this type and payload. So this complete object will be returned here. Okay, this inside here. Now this object will be there, this object type and payload. Now this type and payload, when this fetch user success kind of action will be dispatched, then again the reducer will catch it. Inside our, we can see that inside the entities, no, users, yeah. So fetch user success. So when we, so this will be called fetch user success and it will mutate the state using the inbuilt immer, that pure kind of function, immutable state thing. And now whenever this will be, whenever this reducer will be called, so the state will change and again it will be rendered. Now I will show the console logs. So when I will click this 1 2 3 my saga, now Let's understand what is being consoled here. So we can see, notice from here, yeah, this in between these equals line. Okay, so action received. Let's go here. Folder structure will be explained at last. So in home screen, this this dispatched action has been called fetch user, okay, with an empty object, and then this will be returned. Now this thing will return a complete object where the type will be of fetch user and payload will be of data, which is an empty, which is empty now. Okay, now when this fetch user will be dispatched from here, so now this equal to sign is here, this equal to sign, now we are dispatching this. Okay, so now come here in fetch user, this action type, this thing will be dispatched. Now the middleware will catch it, because we have defined such in such a way that our middleware, the watcher saga, will catch the fetch user, in which fetch user saga action function will be called. Now thing to note is there that fetch user saga, we are like we are just calling the function here, like we are just giving the reference here that whenever this thing will be cached by the middleware, it will automatically call this function, and this function will in turn call an API. Okay, so that's how asynchronous thing works. So when this function will be called, see here we are not providing any data to it, but here we are receiving some argument, right? So this argument is nothing but that thing in the action. Let me show you in the action. Yeah, so in the action, when we are calling the fetch user, this thing is being returned, right? This thing is returned. Now this thing is only being received here in the fetch user action. Okay, so even though we are not passing the argument here, but the middleware is automatically catching the argument since we are passing it into the function parameter here. So the action will be called, and this action is this, see, fetch user. I'm writing action, just a second, action received, where is this thing? Yeah, this is it. Yeah, so the reducer, inside the reducer, this will be called action received. So type and payload. So whenever we are dispatching the action here from our home fetch user, so first it will go to the reducer. Now you can see that action received will be the type and payload. Like what I'm saying, this uh, the same object, this type and payload. Type will be action type dot fetch user, where fetch user is this fetch user. Okay, so action type and payload will be data. Okay, so that only it is dispatching. uh, okay, so you can see action received and type and payload is equal to payload. Since we are destructuring here, you can see this will be my our action. This is the previous state and this is the current state. In the current state we are destructuring type and payload. So here it is coming, action received, type, you can see fetch user, and payload is that thing, right? We are dispatching it like here only. You can see that inside the payload is an object, is a complete object which contains only the data key, and this can be easily seen here, right? Payload is a complete object, but our data is empty because we are calling with an empty object, right? So this will be assigned to this thing data, and now complete payload will be here. I hope now you understand, right? So this thing, now first it will come to here, and then the middleware will be called. So we go into our middleware, which is sagas. So here, now first line is clear, right? Now second line, action received in the worker saga. Worker saga, right? Watcher saga, when it sees that this kind of action is being dispatched, it will immediately uh, grab it, and then it will call the worker saga fetch user saga. I'm sorry. Okay, so action received in the worker saga will be the action. Okay, you can notice that this thing and this thing is same. Why? Because again these two statements are an effect of a single call, which is fetch user. So actually what happened, that when I called here fetch user, so this thing called now this action is being dispatched, so the reducer catches it and it prints. And here we are destructuring it, type and payload, right? Type and payload is coming now. Again when this action was dispatched, the watcher saga was set up. So watcher saga sees that there is an opportunity for me to do some work. So when the fetch user was there, it will call fetch user saga. So that single thing, first, that single action fetch user was dispatched. It went to the reducer they printed something, the first line, and then the middleware comes into the picture, and then it calls this fetch user saga. Now see, even though we are just passing the reference of this function, and inside the argument we are receiving some and inside our this parameter in the arguments we are receiving an argument which is which is being passed under the hood. We are not explicitly passing it here. Okay, so and this thing action is exactly equal to the first line. That's why you can see that payload and type, since I have not destructured it and printed it just like that, so the object has been printed into the string format. Okay, now this does the work. It doesn't do anything special. It just shows that it is calling some API, but in actuality this API is nothing but it is just returning something. So the third line is being printed by this. So so when we call the function, we can pass an argument here inside the function. So the argument from the worker saga, right? So you can see that API is receiving some argument, so that's why it is printed args received in API is equal to args. You can see the third line, args received in API, the argument from the worker saga. Okay, now this will return this thing 123 my saga. So 123 my saga, now this complete line is now equal to users, so users will be equal to 123 my saga, and then this fetch user success action will be dispatched with data as users. Now what will happen now, let's go into the actions. Fetch user success. Okay, so fetch user success, this is it. So now when it is receiving data, it is actually sending a function with the type as action type dot fetch user success and payload as data. Okay, so whatever is being passed as a data, I'm completely putting it inside the payload object. So now this whole thing will be dispatched, and when we will dispatch this, we can come back here. Yeah, so when we will dispatch this fetch you, so put is basically acting as a alias for dispatch. Okay, so fetch user success, so fetch user success will be called, right? This thing will be called. Okay, this thing will be returned by it. So now put will be in actuality is calling the fetch user success action with the payload as our data. Okay, so again it is calling an action, right? So now we will come inside our reducers. We can see that it is again printing action received, fetch user success, and payload is our data, right? The data is an array. You can see 123 and my saga. So that is only being printed is a 123 my saga. That complete array is printed exactly like it. That's the beauty of weirdness, whatever we can say of JavaScript. Now, use selector is a React Redux hook. It just gives us the access to the state store, our store. Okay, so why state.entities.users.loading? Because we have arranged our things in that way only. Like you can see that now I'm going to explain the folder structure. So inside Redux we have actions, reducers and sagas, and this is the store is like complete complete output of this folder. Okay, store. So inside the actions, this is our action types, and entities is users. Entities is different kind of actions: fetch user success, fetch user failure, different type of actions. Okay, reducers are inside the entities only. This entities folder. Inside the entities folder we can have product folder, user folder, and other things related to entities, which can be categorized inside the entities. Okay, and this entities is the output of this entities folder, which is in actuality a combined reducer, and this combined reducer will go inside the root reducer, and now the root reducer will be the single output file from the whole reducers folder. Okay, so that's the way I have arranged. So inside the entities, this uses, this is the meat part of it, and this thing, and we are just exporting here this. Let me it is correct, this is users. Okay, and inside the entities, this has been received as users only. Good. Yeah. Okay, so I will click 123 masala. Yeah, so inside the entities we can see the users, and entities is the output of this entities folder. Root saga is the output of this reducers folder. So in the future when I will have many more folders, I will simply pass the reducers of each folder into our root reducer, and root reducer will be the output of our complete reducers. Similarly, actions also, entities, products, users, other things will be inside the entities, and these will and the and the string part would be added to action types. Okay, and this will be, and this users and other folders will be exported from actions. So actions is done, reduces is done. Now coming to sagas. Sagas, we have root saga, which is like analogous to root reducer. Okay, so root saga and users, so different users, products, and all like in users we will have all the asynchronous actions related to user. In product saga we will have all the asynchronous actions related to products. Okay, and these all things will be passed into the root saga, and then this root saga will be imported inside the store. Okay, so you can see root saga, root reducer, these will be combined. So when in the future I will need to add any of the sagas related to any of the thing, I will just create a file, add that, and import that inside the root saga, and then from here I will import that inside the store. No, in actuality I don't need to do anything changes inside the store. I just need to add here inside the sagas folder product saga, and then I will import that product saga into the root saga, and then root saga as a combined is being imported inside the store only. So I don't need to do anything outside this sagas folder. So I will just create a new file for the product asynchronous actions, and then I will inside the root saga, this is like users, I will put a comma here, and then I will write products in future if I add some products saga. Okay, so that's the beauty of this this arrangement of folder structure. So that's why our reducers will be of the kind entities slash users. Why? entities slash users, because this is the actual reducer, and this is being combined inside the entities reducer. So similarly, in the future, whenever I need to add anything related to the entities like products, clothes of the users, products of the users, so I will just add here, and these will be then only, and then we only need to add the users like products and cloths and other items we will need to add here. Okay, so outside this entities folder I don't need to do any changes, because this entity reducer as a whole is automatically being exported to root reducer. So until and unless I don't add a new feature like separate from the entity, like something else, I'm not getting something. So something, some if suppose I make another folder beside the entities, I make another folder, and so that only at that time I need to make changes to the root reducer. Other time, if I'm adding inside, if I'm adding anything inside the entities folder, then all the things that needs to be changed will be changed inside the entities.js only, and that will be automatically imported to the root reducer. So that's the beauty of this thing. Like if I need to add in the future anything inside the entities reducer, I will add here, and all the and only change, I will make a new file, and only changes I need to make will be in entity.js. And if I need to add and correspondingly, if I need to add any products actions, I will just I don't need to make any changes. I will just make a file here and will export. Okay, and so reducer and saga. So in saga, if I will in future, suppose if I add anything, so I will only need to make the changes in root saga. Okay, so that's the beauty. So that's why we are getting here, like this was the thing, focus on here. Okay, so what I was saying, why, yeah, so I was explaining this, right? In home, why we are doing state we need to do, that is like obvious. Now entities, users and users, because we have just made our reducers, we have set up our store in that way only, right? Like the, you can say a tree like structure where the root of the tree will be the state, and then all its children will be there. Now one of the children is entities, and one of the children of the entities is users. Okay, so till here we will come on the third level of the tree. Okay, depth of the tree will be 3. State, which will be the root of the store, root of the tree. Now entities, one of the children, and one of the children of entities is users. Others can be say products, clothes, etc, etc. Okay, so users. Now inside the users object, we have users, we have loading, and we have error. How this is coming? This is actually coming from action, like root reducer. Let me just, yeah, this is actually coming from here, the initial state, our loading, users and error. Okay, so that's why we have done here like this. So use selector is just like calling the getting the access of the store, and use dispatch is also the hook which helps in dispatching actions. I hope I made myself clear. Thank you.